Hello. In thinking about the things that I would like you to learn beyond mathematics, I came up with two things. One is probably given away by the fact that you can see me sitting outside. Um, to me, a really important thing is to go outside more. I'm sitting here in my garden, and you can probably hear some birds in the background. You might see them fly overhead. You may hear some cars go past on the road. But being outside, I think, is really good for you. I've been fortunate enough to travel around the world and visit some wonderful places in Ecuador and Africa and Costa Rica and places like that. And whenever I go out and spend time outside in nature, I find it very calming. So my advice to you is to spend more time outside. In this modern world, of course, our lives are dominated by computers and phones and things like that. And I'm not going to say that they're bad, because I don't believe that they are. But we do spend a lot of our time looking at screens. And I think if you can spend a little bit more time outside and in nature, maybe going for a walk or a cycle or a run, or swim in the sea, or whatever it is that works for you, then that can only be a good thing. I think being in the natural world is just very good for people. If you've got some work to do and you can take it outside and sit outside, do that. Obviously, make sure you're still doing the work and make sure you're socially distancing. But there's something about being outside that I think is inherently good for all of us, especially at the moment when a lot of us are stuck inside for large portions of the day. The second thing is a story I was told some years ago, and I find it very helpful sometimes to think about it. It's a story that comes in different versions. There's different versions told around the world. The basic premise is that there was a king many years ago, and he wanted to know everything. He wanted to amass all of the knowledge in the world to make him the most powerful king. And so he spoke to his wise men and said to them, go out into the world and find all of the knowledge, find all of the books that you can, and I want to create the greatest library that there's ever been. And all the books in there, and then I can read them all, and I will know more than any other person. And so the wise men went out, and after a few years they travelled around and they got copies of every single book that had knowledge in it. And they created the greatest library ever known. And they went to their king and said, we've done it, we've got the library, come and have a look. So he went into the library and he looked around and he said, well, that's amazing, but there's too much, there's just too much knowledge, there's too many things for me to learn. I'll never learn all of this. Can you please reduce it somehow, make it so that there's a sensible amount for me to read? And so the wise men went away and they looked at all the books, and they realised that some of the information was in several books, and so they made sure they only had one copy of each piece of information for the king. And they did lots of editing down, and they managed to, after several years of work, they managed to take the entire library and distill it down into one bookshelf. Very long bookshelf, I would assume. And they went to their king and said, King, we have done it. We have now got this one bookshelf. Please come and read it and become the most knowledgeable person. So he looked at the bookshelf and he said, well, you know what, I'm a really busy man. I don't have time to read all of that. I need you to do better. I need you to put it in one book. Crunch it all down into one book. So the wise men, probably rather sad by now, went and they looked at this bookshelf and they crunched everything down and they edited it as much as they possibly could, and they made it into just the one book, probably an enormous book, I'm sure, and said, here you go, king, one book. This is what you need to learn. And the king looked at it and he said, I'm getting old now. This has taken too long. I cannot guarantee that I will be alive by the time I finish this book. It's just too big. I need one sentence. One sentence is all I need. Can you distill the world's knowledge down into one sentence? And they went away and they thought very hard, and they came back and they eventually handed him a slip of paper, and he was on his deathbed as they passed it to him. And on this piece of paper were just 4 words, and they said, King, if you know this, you know the most important thing. He looked at the piece of paper and it said on it, this too shall pass. And to me that's an incredibly powerful sentiment. If we think about the current coronavirus situation, it will pass. It's horrific. There are a lot of people dying. There are horrific stories that are in the news every day. And if we look beyond coronavirus and we look at climate change and we look at political situations and everything, they will all pass. Every single one of them will go away eventually. We need to weather the storm and we need to ride through it, but it will pass. But it also means more than that. I was playing with my children. I have 2 boys, and we were playing in the garden today. And I was looking at them, and we were having a lovely time as a family and kicking a ball around and being silly. And I realised that that will pass. That too will pass. They will get older. They won't want to play with me in the same way. And these times will pass. And the reason that I wanted to think that is not because I want to be sad that it will go away. It's that I want to think, well, actually this matters. This is important. And it will pass. So I need to make the most of it while I can. And so I think my message to all of you as you go off to university and things like that is think carefully about the choices you make in any given situation. If it's a situation that is bad and you need to work through it, then do whatever you need to get through it, of course. But it will go away, things will change, they will get better. But if something is going really well, don't assume it always will. Don't assume it will always stay the same. Enjoy it while you can and look forwards to making it happen again in the future. I'm finding that with some of my friends, I'm actually seeing them more now that we're on lockdown and isolation. I'm taking more time to do FaceTime and Skype and things like that. And so I'm seeking to make my time better. And actually, I think overall, weirdly, the lockdown is making me more sociable. So anyway, there's my 2 thoughts for you. Go outside more. It's really good for you. Go for a walk. Go for a cycle. Do something outside. Just go outside. It's good for you. Take your work with you. Take your phone with you. Take your headphones with you. I don't care. Just get outside. Ideally, listen to the sounds of nature. Get somewhere that's green. If you can't do any of that, if you live in a big city and you're surrounded by concrete and you can't get out anywhere natural, that's fine too. Go onto YouTube, find nature sounds and just put them on in the background. Open your window and stick your head out of it for a while. Hopefully it will have a calming effect. So yeah, go out more and remember that this too shall pass. A bit like your time having to listen to me. Take care, everyone.